Hello, I am Dr. Lynn Gerner, and welcome to another edition of Geek Out with Dr. Lynn. For those of you who don't know me, I am a chiropractor in a super fun specialty. I get to help parents and babies to breastfeed better. That is so much fun. I am also honored to be an international speaker, instructor, researcher. I am this close to my IBCLC, which is an International Board Certified Lactation Consultant. And like you can see on the screen here, this week we're going to talk about why the palate is so high, being able to explain that with simple anatomy. It's very cool. Okay, so if you were to ask your doctor or lactation consultant why the palate is so high, that person would likely tell you, as they are trained to do, that it's formed in the womb before birth. And if it's too high, well, then it's just too high. There's nothing you can do about it. Well, that information is partially right. The palate does start out forming in the womb by the baby pressing its tongue up against the roof of the mouth, which is called the palate. And ideally, by doing so, that forms a nice relaxed arch. But the story doesn't end there. The palate is also formed by certain cranial bones, and the alignment or placement of those bones can be altered during the birth process. And most of the time, that absolutely explains why the palate becomes too high. Okay, so you've heard me say many, many times in my other videos, hopefully, the sutures of the baby's skull are not solid or fused. They don't stay together in a solid form like that of an adult. And those cranial bones can move a lot as they mold through the birth canal to allow the baby's head to be born. So let me show you what makes up the palate. Here is a big skull, just because it's easy to show you. If I could get that in my camera, it's a little awkward. And the palate, the outside of the palate is right here. It's called the maxilla. In the baby, it's in two pieces. Okay, there's a suture there in the baby. And if you can see here, it also ties into the jaw. All these are attached. Okay, we'll go through that in other videos. If we flip it upside down, which you can't really see on this model, then we go over to the model that's on the left of my screen. Remember, this is flipped upside down as if you were looking just like through the chin and up towards the brain. Then we see what's called the maxilla, which I just showed you in yellow here. That's what it looks like when it's flipped upside down, and where it fits to the palatine bone. So that palatine bone is what we think of as the palate or the soft palate. Now, we're going to show you something else that's really cool. I'm going to take off the top of the head. Mine has a brain in it. Of course it does. And now we're looking at it like this, okay? Actually, like this. I'm gonna match it to that one right there. What we're looking at, you see that long word called the sphenobasilar joint, okay? That is key there. I'm gonna show you a different view of it. Here is also what's called the sphenobasilar joint. This is the occiput, the back of the head, and this is what's called the sphenoid, which is that pink bone right there in the interior of the cranium, off to the side. Now, the take-home message is that this sphenobasilar joint, where it meets in the interior of the cranium, is bendy. It moves like this, like so. It moves in the interior of the cranium, okay? And if I can get that back there, the palate sits about right there. We're going to see that in the next slide. Look at that, okay? So the palatine bone sits, if I turn this around, that's the view that you're seeing right there. Actually, nope, it's like this, okay? The palatine bone sits right there, approximately right there. So again, when that cranium elongates and gets longer, then this flips up and the palate is always higher. It's always higher as it gets elongated, okay? Very, very cool. You can see that in that diagram. This little guy had a very, very high palate, and it's almost always predictable. Now, what does that mean to you? So if the baby does have a high palate, that means that there's going to be a poor seal. It can't get a vacuum suction because it can't get the tongue all the way up there. Okay, you might hear clicking, the baby might pop off. There's going to be a poor transfer because the milk is transferred because of that vacuum seal, and if you can't get the vacuum seal, you just can't get a good transfer. There's also a lot of gas swallowed. If the baby can't transfer milk, then of course the weight gain is off. They can't take in enough volume. Oftentimes this also turns out to be colic, irritation, digestive issues, and then with a little more details behind this that I'm not including right now, the misalignment of those joints often leads to all sorts of developmental and neurological challenges as well. Now, if you thought that this was interesting, then I invite you to check out my website called The Anatomy of Breastfeeding. It's at thegoodlifelearning.com, and there's a free about 45-minute class in there called Breastfeeding Made Simple. There's the QR code. It's my gift to you. Please look at that, and you can dive into all these subjects a lot deeper. And if you happen to be in the greater Sacramento area, I would love to take care of you and your baby in my clinical practice. My information is right there. Look for me in future videos, and thank you for joining me. Bye-bye.